There it is. Go.
Hello, citizens of YouTube land.
Hey!
Sorry about the loudness of our voices today, and I bet you're wondering about the weird intro. Well, it's because today we're here at the Titanic Museum. And why are we filming this intro in front of the Titanic Museum, you might ask?
Why, Dad?
Well, it's because if you've seen the title of the review, then you know that it's a comparison contrast of A Night to Remember and Titanic.
Yeah,
So it's a double review for you guys today because we love you guys.
of course. And we like to torture ourselves.
Yeah. So we're back, guys, and here we are with the beginnings of the review for today, which, as you guys already know, is, of course, A Night to Remember and Titanic. Double review, comparison, contrast, because, as we said before, that we love you guys, but at the same time, we hate ourselves. So we're going to do it for you guys. All right, so right away, first off is A Night to Remember, which came out July 3rd, 1958. Produced for a budget of roughly $600,000. No known estimates on how much it made, but apparently it has not made its money back. However, it has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes for those of you who are interested in that sort of thing. And at the same time, as previously mentioned in a screw up that I, the president, have made, this film is in the British Film Institute.
Yeah. So here's the thing: America has this weird rule where they don't like inputting foreign films that are very influential into their national film registry for some reason. I guess it's like because we hate the Brits or something. Probably.
And let it be stated, guys, that right away, this is, in fact, the most accurate depiction of the Titanic sinking.
Yep.
Period. No questions asked on it. So, VP, take it away since you're doing A Night to Remember here, and I got the unfortunate task of trying to defend Titanic.
Alright, so A Night to Remember opens up with the ship about to set sail from Southampton, New England to New York City, and we see all the people on board waving their family and friends goodbye. But unfortunately, all these people that we see on board, most of them are going to be sleeping with the fishes.
Literally. In this case, it's not a joke. It literally happens, guys.
Yeah. So, the Titanic, we see brief snippets of the first 2 days of the Titanic's voyage to New York. Mind you, this is its first voyage, guys. It didn't even make its first voyage before being sunk.
You know, one of the things, guys, is that it was speculated and said that God himself could not sink this ship.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we're not saying that it was an act of God, because, well, it most certainly wasn't. But it's quite telling that one little simple iceberg managed to cause all of that.
And you got to remember, this wasn't even like a small iceberg either. It was a small iceberg actually, according to like some of the ones we've seen. This iceberg was only about 200 feet.
Yeah, which
from top to bottom.
I
It was
know
only
we're
200
saying
feet.
that in the grand scheme of things, and it would be, they certainly probably would not have been able to see it very well because it was described as a moonless night with very little star activity in the sky. But go ahead, keep going.
So, like I said, the film, like I said, we see brief snippets of the first 2 days, and now we're getting to the third day and the final night of the Titanic's voyage. We also have seen the HMS Californian, which, real quick, HMS stands for Her Majesty's Ship.
Yeah.
Or His Majesty's Ship. It's what the British use for military ships and not their liners like the Titanic.
which are Royal Majesty ships.
hmm So, like I said, the Californian is there, and it's receiving telegrams from the Titanic. It also received a iceberg warning from local ice patrols and stuff. So they send it to the Titanic, and they're like, "Yeah, whatever." Put it back onto the pile. This is mistake number one:
Yeah.
ignoring the warnings.
Oh, so guys, first and foremost, he's already describing what's already starting to happen. Uh, just so for the record, the first 30 minutes of the film is basically dialogue about what uh, with little intersects of the lives of the people, and we get to meet certain people that are going to become prominent figures later on.
So we see Second Lieutenant Walter, or sorry, Second Lieutenant Lord, which is actually Walter Lord's dad, who was a officer of the Titanic at the time, and he was one of the only he was one of the surviving people of the Titanic. And in case
Actually, that's Lightoller.
Lightoller,
It's Second Lieutenant Lightoller,
my
and
mistake.
Walter Lord. I'm not sure about all of it. If he just did research behind it and came up with it or whatnot. But what I do know from the research that I just did a few minutes ago is that it's Second Lieutenant Officer Lightoller who uh, is part of this. And
Yeah.
full
So
disclosure, he is the most senior officer to survive.
yeah. So we meet Second Lieutenant Lightoller, who my mistake, by the way. Actually, Walter Lord, he did a lot of research, and he even interviewed like 63 people of the survive, like 63 surviving people of the Titanic, and read a bunch of books and stuff about to write A Night to
And
Remember.
even though this is the most accurate depiction of the sinking of the ship, just like Titanic, several key figures were condensed into one
Yeah,
personality.
but I mean, it makes sense because it's
They had
kind of
to avoid
fictionalized. Yeah,
lawsuits and whatnot as well, so that's why certain characters were portrayed in that way. Go
yeah.
ahead.
So like I said, we meet Second Lieutenant Lightor, who is the senior officer of the Titanic, or one of the senior officers of the Titanic. Then we meet a character of the name of Mr. Andrews, who actually built and came up with the design of the Titanic, and even named it Titanic.
And we also meet the line star director, who is the one who encourages the captain to go faster than what was needed. Go ahead.
Yeah. So he encourages the captain to go faster than what was needed on this fateful night. Mistake number two. And we also see a brief snippet of a dialogue between Mr. Andrews and some rich uppity people. And like, oh, this seems like these lifeboats seem to be, there's not that many of them. He's like, yeah, unfortunately, they said that it would be too much crowd space and stuff, and so we just went by what was
The
needed,
bare minimum.
which is what needed. Mistake number three.
So, to interject a little bit, there's also this really telling scene, guys, and it's going to come up later when I talk about Titanic.
Oh
This
yeah,
scene is the third class, where the third class people, who are essentially all of the poor and downtrodden people who are not on the Titanic for the luxury, but as a passage to America.
yeah.
This scene is them doing an Irish jig because it's mainly Irish immigrants. And we see, they're not even really named, guys, but we see two characters. One is singing along, he's the male. He locks eyes with a female. He encourages her to dance. They have a romance. But unfortunately,
It's
It
not meant
only
to
lasts a
last.
couple hours. Go
Yep.
ahead.
So yeah, as you just mentioned, we see this really cool scene. We see the third class citizens and how they're having a really good time, like they're rowdying, partying, drinking and stuff. And then we see a transition as it pans up to the first class section, in which we see that it's basically boring
And stuffy.
and stuffy.
And they're all being their rich, uppity elites. And I know, I get it. Okay. I will say this, that was a way for the film to portray how it really was. Now, it probably wasn't completely like that. They over exaggerated for effect, but it was to illustrate the difference between the classes. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So then we see the line star person, and he's like looking at it. It's like, yeah, seems like everything's good and stuff. And we see two men on on a watchtower, right? And they're the ones who are looking for the icebergs and stuff. And one of them sees it. One of them sees it, and he yells iceberg. It's a really intense scene, guys. There's no music. It's just shot of the iceberg, shot of the reactions. It keeps cutting back and forth between the two,
And it's only their facial
and you
reactions.
just see pure terror on their face. And this is something that is just really done well. And I suggest you look up the scene. In fact, I might even just show it right here, just to be like, yeah, this is it, guys. It's so good. I love it, and it's a really good scene.
It's quite telling of the film and the way that they were portraying it at the time. There are several film techniques in this film that you guys will recognize from modern movies, that modern movies have lifted: the one shots, the pan outs, the close ups, the
Hmm.
the shot of the iceberg, the shot back, the cutbacks, the edits. It's
The
all
jump cuts, yeah.
it's all pretty revolutionary,
And
because
so
you got to
then,
remember that these film techniques hadn't really been developed but just a couple of years earlier. Go ahead.
and so then, we see that the Titanic has moved slightly to the left, but it's not enough, and it scratches with the ice, and the iceberg leaves a 200-foot gash in the Titanic.
And so then it is hit, and they tell the captain, and that was unavoidable.
And so then he sends down somebody to go inspect the damage. And so then they come back up, and they're like, yeah, here's the thing. These five compartments here, gone. And here's the thing: the Titanic, it can go up with one compartment gone, but it can't go with five,
It can
because
go one, it can go two, it can go three. Heck, it can even go up to four. But when that fifth one went, what would happen after that is the water would just spill
just,
over until eventually.
yeah. So we see, and so then from here on out, it starts to get a little subtlety, and it's basically like you see that the ship is starting to sink a little bit,
Yeah,
and you're seeing it as subtlety.
it's very subtle the way they were doing it and the way they were showing it and the telling and how things were starting to slant a little bit. And then there's the particular scenes where the Titanic is being looked at through like a ship's telescope.
Yeah. So what we see is that the captain tells his person who does like the Morse code to go and send out help, right? So he does, and he sends it out. The Californian is the closest ship there, right?
Only roughly 50 kilometers away.
It's 12 miles out on the
Yeah.
horizon, so it's there.
Well, not 50, excuse me. He's right. 12 miles.
Yeah, so it's 12 miles out on the horizon, and then they're there, and they receive the message, and like, hey, sir, the Titanic is sending help. Do you want us to respond? He's like, it's probably nothing.
Well, here's the thing. The movie indicates that the crew of the Californian are actually jealous of the crew of the Titanic, because apparently according to the movie now, we're not saying this, but according to the movie, that the crew of the Titanic was very boastful. It was like, yeah, we have the best ship in the world and it's not going to sink. And so, as a result of all of that, the Californian, according to the film, didn't take it seriously. Also, at the same time that they're doing the Morse code, the captain says, get the flares, get the rockets, let's shoot them.
No, he said when he's saying what happens is that he sees a ship out on the horizon. Now I've already established that this is the Californian,
Yeah.
right? And so he's like, "Hey, do you see that ship over on the horizon?" He's like, "Yes, sir." And he's like, "Have we seen any of them?" And they're like, "No, they'd be blasting our ears out by now." He's like, "Go, send up the rockets." And so they do. And then it turns out that their SOS actually did get received by the RMS Carpathia.
Which I have to point out right away, guys. This is very cool. Okay. The RMS Carpathia, they get the message that the Titanic is sinking. They wake up their captain. Captain's like, what? The Titanic is sinking. We've got to turn this ship around and get to him pronto. So he jumps up out of bed, takes action, and makes a full steam course to the Titanic.
But here's
Only
the thing.
problem is the Carpathia is only capable of 17 knots per hour. Meaning
and also the
that it will be
Carpathia
4 hours before they can get there.
also in the Carpathia has to do what is known as a Williamson's turn, which is a teardrop turn, which is the same thing that the Titanic had to do in order to avoid the iceberg. And so that also takes a while to do a Williamson's turn. So anyways, so yeah, the Carpathia gets the message, and then they send back saying, "Hey, we're on our way, but it's going to be about 4 hours before we get there." It is 11:40, by the way, when they send this message out, which means they won't get there till about 4 a.m. So then we see that they're like, all right, guys, get your lifeboats on, right? Get your lifebelts on. We have to go up on deck. So then that happens. By the way, this is April in the North Atlantic Sea.
Okay. So the ship is sinking. The first class citizens are boarding the lifeboats. Where are the third class citizens, you might ask? Well, guess what? They basically locked them under tier. That's what.
Mm-hmm.
They kept them from being able to get up to the top of the ship. And this, my friends, is something that really irritated me to a degree that I didn't feel like it would in both films, mind you, because it's shown in Titanic 2, which we'll get to. We might actually have to speed this along so we can get into that one.
No, we can wait. We can go
So,
above the 30 minutes.
But anyways, the third class citizens are like, what are you guys doing? You're treating us like animals. And they're basically, yeah, they're being jailed and caged down below. But here's the thing. You cannot discount the actual heroism of the captain and his crew of the Titanic.
No. So the captain, they're getting onto the lifeboats, right? And this woman has like a baby. And so we see this like middle-aged woman take off her coat and put it on her. And then the woman's like, "Aren't you going to freeze?" And she's like, no, I have plenty of fat on me.
Yeah. This is a cool aspect too, because that was a real historical character. Molly, let me check my notes here.
So while he's doing that, so like I said, we even see that the second officer Latour has even noticed that there are some lifeboats that are going down that aren't actually to capacity.
The name of the character is Margaret Molly Brown. She's very important because, and this is jumping ahead a little bit, but we'll bring it back. She's on the lifeboat already. The ship is sinking, which we can kind of coincide with this anyway. We don't have to go too far. The ship is sinking. She's on the lifeboat with the people. She's the one that's like, hey, we probably should turn around and go back.
And then one of the people is like, "No, we shouldn't. They're going to swamp us."
And she's like, well, BS on that. And
Well, here.
commanders the rowboat to go back.
Yeah, I'm gonna put in the clip where they say the line and stuff. So yeah, so like I said, everything is happening. The captain, he has to make a call, and he has to make a very difficult call that no captain should ever have to make. But unfortunately, he has to, and he says it's everyone for themselves,
So
which means he says, "All right, men, you're good to go.
you might be
Go ahead and get
wondering
off."
about the lovers that we mentioned a few minutes ago. Well, they're one of the last ones to get off of the boat. And when they're in the water, clinging to a door, there is a funnel that snaps off of the Titanic and, well, really make sure that they sleep with the fishes.
Yeah. And so basically a guy comes through the main like hall thing and sees Mr. Andrews, right? We haven't heard from him in a while, but he's basically feeling guilty that it's sinking and stuff. And so the
State of
guy
shock, really.
yeah, and so the guy's like, "Hey, aren't you going to try, Mr. Andrews?" And he's like, "No."
And it's speculated at that point, guys, that Mr. Andrews was waiting for the end to happen. However, and this is important, there's also accounts that Mr. Andrews was last seen alive much later on, and in fact had died in the water. So, with all this being said,
So yeah, what happens then is that the Titanic officially starts to sink. The captain goes down with the ship, and then we see later that 1,500 people lost their lives.
and as I'd said earlier, because this was very important, that, and I get it to a certain degree, and that they may have over exaggerated it a bit. And for me personally, I really felt it because, and this is full rant time, okay? That never needed to happen.
Yep.
All right. First and foremost, as he was talking about it, they didn't have to go as fast. They could have had enough lifeboats. They were so concerned with making it look aesthetically pleasing to the first class citizenry that they didn't bother to account for all the lives of the people on board.
Yep.
And that, in and itself, might be the greatest sin of that entire debacle.
And here's the thing: if they hadn't sped up, then maybe, just maybe, the
They could have had
Titanic,
enough time.
they could have been basically cruising along at the speed they were, saw the iceberg go by, and they're like, "Oh, good thing we missed that one."
They could have had enough time to see it. They didn't have to keep the third class citizenry down there like that. They didn't have to do so many things, but they did. And maybe, just maybe,
And
as a result, karma bit them in the you know what.
and you know what? Maybe it also could have been avoided. So many lives could have been avoided from sleeping with the fishes if the Californian actually responded.
Yeah.
They shot off all of their rockets.
So, guys, it doesn't show the ship snapping in half, which, okay, let me
Yeah,
just interject
I
for
know.
just a second on
Here,
that.
I'm also going to do it. So the reason why they don't show the ship snapping in half is that it was thought at the time, before it was discovered in the 80s, but at the time they thought that the Titanic had actually sunken in one piece.
Yeah.
And also technical limitations also prevented them snapping the ship in half.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, they actually built like a scale model of the Titanic just to sink it.
So it's a really, really good film though, guys. Overall, there's not a lot as far as the characters and whatnot, because the main draw here is what is happening to the ship.
Yeah,
And it's also the reactions afterwards. Because one other thing,
Yeah, there's this really good scene.
that the first class people are so oblivious to what is really happening that they're like, oh, what's going on? And they're like, oh, don't worry about it. You can go back to bed. We just hit an iceberg. It's no big deal. And they're like, oh, okay.
So here's the thing. There's this really good scene after the Titanic goes down completely, and that we get little random bits of dialogue showing people's inner thoughts and stuff. And so we leave it at that with A Night to Remember, probably one of the greatest movies about the Titanic ever made.
I would venture that it is the greatest. It is also a movie that helped define what a disaster movie should be.
Yeah, it defined what a disaster movie should be, and it helped kickstart the spark of disaster movies in the 70s.
And so, with that being said, final rating for this one, guys, 5 out of 5. What say you?
Also a 5 out of 5. Now let's get on with the
No.
torture.
We got to do the outro for that first. We got to do our little bit. If you have seen A Night to Remember and you believe that it is the worst Titanic movie of all time, then clearly
You've never seen Titanic.
No, I was going to say because that's not even the worst.
Oh.
We'll get into it. Clearly, you have not seen Titanic 2.
Oh God, I forgot that existed.
Yeah, and we got the sequel to that for the joke for Titanic. So
yeah.
Anyways, guys, on to the next one.
On with the torture.
So, Titanic is a 1997 film directed by James Cameron, and it stars Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio and Billy Zane. Those are your core cast members.
Oh, it also has Bill Paxton in it.
And it's also got Kathy Bates in it. So there are your star cast. Okay, so Titanic is
first made for a budget of $200 million, and it's made $2.239 billion at the box office.
Yeah, like that is insane money, guys. Also, because we always do this, for those of you who are interested, it currently has a 88% on Rotten Tomatoes. So imagine that.
By the way,
for once,
A Night to Remember,
the critics don't quite like Titanic as much as they do A Night to Remember.
A Night to Remember has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. You're welcome.
Yeah. So Titanic, it's very similarly shot to A Night to Remember, in that we get all the people boarding the Titanic. We meet the Rose character, who's played by Kate Winslet, and her uppity, snobbish mom. Both of whom, mind you, are actually fictional characters.
And Dad, please say it. Please call her what her fiance is. Please. Please, just once.
Maybe.
Please, no, just once. Right now. Just call him what he is real quick.
Well, I'm getting into this, okay? All right. So, Rose is engaged to Caldon, played by Billy Zane. And Caldon is, well, how could I best describe this?
Just say it, please. Just call him what he is, Dad.
He is a rich, uppity jerk. Because we keep this family friendly. He wanted me to say it.
If you won't say it, I will.
No, we're not going to have my 17-year-old swear on our channel.
Bruh. Just call him what he is. You did it for the KFC review, Dad.
That was just unintentional, and it's better if it comes out natural rather than planning ahead. Anyways, guys. Yeah, he's just the worst. Is Caldon, because he treats everybody like street rats and gutter trash, and that's how he sees Jack. Now, Jack Dawson is played by Leonardo DiCaprio, and he essentially wins his right to be on the Titanic via a card game, and he's got a little buddy named Fabrizio, and it's pretty sad what happens to Fabrizio, actually. Yeah. We'll get into that. So, yeah, Jack wins the tickets, and he goes to board the Titanic, and This is the first scene in which we have kind of, sort of, maybe a little bit of, I don't want to say that it's racism as much as it is um, some kind of nationalism type of thing. But he goes to board the Titanic, and the officer says, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, you can't be on here." And he goes, "No, you don't understand. We're Americans. We have a right to be here." So I don't know if it was a case of like American F
Well,
yeah, or
here's the thing. He actually says, "Did you go through inspection?" He's like, "Yes, we don't have any lice. Plus, we're American."
yeah. The assumption being that Americans wouldn't have lice, but British
Yeah.
and Irish people do.
Hey, Dad, just 1 second. We're about to reach the limit.
Yeah, we're gonna have.
Sorry about that.
And we're back with part 2. Sorry
Yeah.
about that,
Sorry
guys.
about that, guys. Our editing software requires us when we film on this camera that it is 30 minutes.
Yeah. So, as I was saying, Jack has now boarded the Titanic. He's pretty enthralled with everything. I'm going to kind of speed through a lot of this because it's not really all that necessary, but you may experience a little yada yadaing here. But, anyways, he's aboard the Titanic, and then we get the famous shot, guys, where
Where-
he's up on the starboard, I guess. I don't know the actual ship term, so don't at me if I got it wrong.
It's the
Okay.
hull. It's the hull. It's the front of the ship, guys. You know, where
Yeah.
he's like, up on there. He's like, I'm the king of the world. You know.
So you got that, and Rose is being put down by her fiance and her mother constantly, to the point to where she's basically
wanting to
thinks,
delete herself.
yeah,
By
she wants to sleep with the fishes, literally.
Yeah, by jumping off the Titanic.
So, and I know I've sped through a lot of this because it doesn't really matter that much because we'll get into it. So Jack, we're getting to the most important parts anyways. Jack, he sees Rose. He says, I got to intervene. If you jump, I jump. I got to go in after you, blah, 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 blah. They connect. So, like I said, because honestly, if you've seen it, you already know. So, it is a pretty good love story to a certain degree, but not really.
The one in A Night to
scheme of things.
Listen, the one in A Night to Remember was actually better, guys.
It kind of was, because you didn't. It was sort of like the star-crossed lovers type of thing, where like the fates meet and align, but it's not really meant to be, and that was the story that you got there. Here, you get a ton of exposition and dialogue about Jack being sort of this artist who travels all the way around the world, and Rose is enthralled with him, and they strike up a relationship, and Caldone can't handle it, so he goes all psychopath, which is kind of weird and cool.
Yeah.
But he does, and he's scheming with his valet and butler, and they're both, okay, we just got to say this. They are both over the top bad guys.
They're
all
like
right?
Bond villains.
They are cartoonishly evil.
Yeah, they're like Bond villains in a way.
I mean, they are over the top. And I don't know if this was intentional, but that's how they played it, guys.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's like really, really into putting Rose down. Is Caldone, like he like really gets off on it? All right. See, it's natural. It's better when it's natural, isn't it?
Oh my god.
So, her mom seems to take great pleasure in putting her down too. So she just was like, "Screw you guys, I'm gonna go with Jack now."
Screw you guys, I'm going home.
So she, and I'm yada yadaing here, but yeah.
So
they're together, and she asked Jack to draw her without clothes on.
With her only wearing the heart of the diamond or the heart of the ocean,
Which is very important at the end here, guys.
Yeah. So, anyways, so we don't know how this film passed with a PG-13 rating.
He thinks it's because they covered one.
Yeah, listen. If you cover one, that's okay. But if you show both, nah, you're getting an R rating.
Yeah.
Like,
So he draws her, and then they have the heart of the ocean diamond, but in the midst of all this BS, the Titanic is still is sinking, guys.
no, it's not. No, it's not. It hasn't even hit the iceberg yet by this point. Remember,
Right,
so
right.
they run away from
So they run
Cal's
away
butler
from Caldone and his goon.
and into a car in which
They have steaminess because they have time for this.
of course.
And so, but in the midst of them running around, they manage to get up on top of the deck, and this is the most plot convenient point I could have ever imagined. But you have Jack and Rose literally right there on the deck as the iceberg hits.
Yeah, well, like I said, we see the two, those two characters I talked about, the two watchmen on the top on the tower. One of them is like looking at them. It's like, hey, look at them down there. He's like, if anything to keep me warm. He's like, I don't want any of that. It's actually a funny bit of dialogue, and then they see it.
Today, though, fair warning, guys, by some weirdo standards, today that would be considered a homophobic joke. Go ahead.
But then the two watchmen, they see it, and it's again, it's a stillest night. It is a moonless night, not a star in the sky. And they see it, and they're just like, iceberg. And once again, actually, this part is actually kind of similar to the very tense scene, except they added music to this, and it's like, why would you do that? And
now, since he mentioned music, they play
oh my gosh, don't remind me.
My Heart Will Go On.
Yes, if you thought
non-stop.
If you thought that the Godfather theme from The Godfather was annoying enough from it playing the entire time in both movies, you clearly have not seen My Heart Will Go On.
Imagine 3 hours of My Heart Will Go On.
3 hours and 14 minutes.
Imagine that. Just imagine.
Yeah. Just imagine how annoying that will be. You literally want to take a screwdriver and stab your ear with it just to make it stop.
Yeah. So anyways, there are some scenes that are lifted directly from A Night to Remember, mind you. Let's get into some of these points. First and foremost, in A Night to Remember, we have the scene with the iceberg, and then the chunks of ice are on deck, and they're playing soccer with it. This is lifted directly in Titanic. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, and there's another part where the dance scene is also lifted from A Night to Remember, because
the Irish jig scene.
Yeah, the Irish jig scene in which Jack and Rose are. Except it doesn't take place on the day it happened, but the day before.
Here's one thing too. Rose apparently automatically knew how to do Irish river dancing. And just because.
Real quick, real talk though, there's a scene in the movie where Rose says, when she's recounting the experience of her getting drawn naked. You want to take it away, Dad?
Yeah, give me a second. Okay. So we should mention that we did yada yada through a lot of it, but there's the treasure hunter who was searching for the heart of the ocean, and they found it in the Titanic, and then the old Rose shows up just out of nowhere and is relaying all the events that we were describing before. And as she's describing the picture drawing scene, she mentions that it was the most erotic moment of her life until then, meaning just now, meaning that she experienced what a woman experiences when they're being, shall we say, pleasured.
Oh my God!
Yes. 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 100% yes. So,
Yeah.
Rose and Jack, though, overhear conversations involving the second lieutenant and the captain and a bunch of other
Except for
people,
some
and
reason,
they realize that the ship is going to sink. So, they go to tell Caldone and his goon ass valet. And in the process, the valet meets him ahead of time. He plants the diamond on Jack. And this is important for a reason, because they take Jack and they handcuff him several uh, decks below, basically near the third class section of the ship, meaning he is basically way down below deck.
Yeah.
They're going to escort Rose off when she breaks free and goes to Jack. By this time, the room that he's in is halfway full of water. So she has to go and find somebody to help. She goes to find somebody to help. He refuses. So, in a burst of action, with thinking on her feet, smashes a glass case, grabs an axe, goes back to Jack. She's going to swing. Jack says, "Wait a second. Let's take a practice swing on that dresser over there." I think because, as much as he wants to get free, he doesn't want to lose his hand. So,
Or die.
yeah. So then Rose swings the axe, and cuts him free. On one swipe, mind you. Just does it.
Yeah.
So they're free. And they're wading through the water, and they're locked out now. And they managed to convince one of the guards who had keys to help them, but he drops the keys. I know, right? Just he's like, oh, and he's trying, and then he just drops the keys. And he's like, "Yep, I'm not going to bother trying to get these keys. Y'all on your own." Boop, 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 and he runs away.
Yep.
That's what happens.
So before that, though, Cal takes the gun from the butler-looking dude, right? Because obviously he had one. So he takes his gun and tries shooting Jack.
So, but they have to go underwater. They get the keys. They get free. And he is right. There is the scene where the guy goes just insane with rage and tries to shoot Jack. And they escape. And Rose is going to get on the boat now. And Jack and Caldone are both there. And Caldone says, "There's another boat on the other side of the Titanic here. We'll get on it. You're going to be fine, Rose. You're okay." And Jack says, "Yeah, see, there's a boat." And then Caldone says, as she's being lowered down, "That's a pretty good lie." And Jack's like, "Yeah, you were pretty good at it too." Because they both knew that, well, Jack says, "There isn't a boat and you have a plan and an agreement, is there?" And he goes, "Oh, yeah, there's an agreement for me, not you."
Yeah. But, Gross does the stupid thing, right? And jumps off. And then, before that, we're seeing the orchestra play, guys.
Which is another scene that is lifted from A Night to Remember.
Yeah. And so then we see the boats lowered, and we see the old snarky woman from A Night to Remember. She's also basically in this one as well.
She's played by Kathy Bates.
Yeah.
But here's a difference. Okay, big difference, which is incorrect on Titanic's part. Actually, a lot of it was incorrect on Titanic's part.
Duh!
But the Kathy Bates character, Margaret Molly Brown, she really did commander the boat.
Yeah.
And Titanic, she's basically told to shut up and sit down. And that's what she does.
Yeah. So, like I said, we see Jack and Rose on the door, right? This is after the ship has kind of go.
But before that, just before that, there's one thing I want to point out. Everything has happened. And Caldone is, in fact, actually on a boat. Never gets any comeuppance until in a voiceover, which we'll mention. But they're on top of the boat as it's going down. And they're going to jump off before it collapses down. Here's the thing, though, guys. Wouldn't the suction of the boat going down had just pulled them in underneath anyway? Isn't that what we call a whirlpool?
Yeah. So, like I said, that happens because, duh, obviously, you know, you can't have Leonardo DiCaprio die just yet. So, like I said, Rose and Jack are on the freezer door, and there's obviously plenty of room for them to stay on, and so it's like Jack's like, no, Rose, you need to stay there, you know. And Jack is like, Rose is like, I'll never let go.
He says, you're going to grow old and you're going to die in your bed as an old lady. But I have to do this. I have to just let go of myself and I'll just die. And then Rose is like, she just casually pushes him off of the door, y'all.
No. She's like, I'll never let go, Jack. I swear I'll never let go. And then he proceeds to let go.
Yeah, and he just falls into the water and fades away.
But before that, Jack, whenever he's telling Rose, he's like, we need to keep swimming. And all I could think of is the Finding Nemo clip where Dory's like, just keep swimming, just keep swimming.
So all of that has happened, and it now transitions to old Rose, who has relayed everything. And here's the thing: the entire crew that was looking for the treasure, they are on the edge of the seats as this old lady is telling them. They're like this. They're like, tell me more about this adventure that you had with a magical time traveling ghost. Because there's a pretty good chance that it was all in her head, because they mentioned that there's no record of Jack when there's. I only mentioned that a minute ago because there is this really dumb theory about Jack being a time traveler.
But so
she,
Rose,
he okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so Rose, right? She's on the edge of the research ship, right? And it turns out she had the heart of the ocean this entire time, and she's just like, and just chucks it into the ocean. Then she apparently she dies in her bed and meets Jack up in Titanic heaven.
Yep. Yes. This is what happens. She dies in her bed and then ascends to Titanic heaven, where all of the people who slept with the fishes are, and her and Jack have a marriage ceremony, baby, and that's how it ends.
Yeah, just
Titanic heaven. So, final rating for this one, guys, though, stupid plot aside, it does have some really good set pieces. It does show a lot of what had actually happened to the Titanic itself, and it does portray some of the people accurately, not correctly, because here's the thing: one of them was kind of, they did get upset about the actor's portrayal that self-deleted himself, because his family got upset about that, because he was shown to be portrayed as this vicious guy because he kind of made sure that somebody else slept with the fishes via bangity bang because he had to. But they were upset about that, and they received some backlash over it, because actually the man had already had half of his lifeboats in the water before the other guy doing the lifeboats had even launched one. So it shows something about the tenacity and the character of that particular person. Now, as I said, there's some really good shots, and James Cameron clearly knows how to make a film. This is evident.
I
Now,
mean, bruh, his filmography: Aliens, Terminator, Terminator 2.
Rose is pretty insufferable. Jack is a fairly sympathetic character. You really understand why he wants to be where he's at and where he's
But
going.
unfortunately, he had to get seduced by the succubus named Rose.
Pretty much. Caldone and his goon butler are completely over the top, but it really makes for an enjoyable experience. Overall, 2 and 7/8 out of 5. What say you?
Also, 2 and 7/8 out of 5.
It's a pretty decent movie. If you really want to get to the nitty gritty of it, though, just skip the first hour and start with that in hour 2, and you'll pretty much have A Night to Remember, which is a much better film, actually.
Oh, definitely.
But uh, as always, if you have seen Titanic 1997 and you believe that it is the worst Titanic movie, well, then clearly you have never seen Titanic 3, which featured a rapping dog and a puppy dog octopus.
Oh.
So, because it's an animated movie, and maybe someday we'll really torture ourselves for you guys with that. Maybe
I
after,
guess.
maybe we'll do some follow-up videos. But other than that, guys, hey, and always just remember, as always, we're just two idiots with a webcam. Our opinions do not matter, except they actually do, because we have a YouTube show, except they actually don't. So, having said all that, stay tuned, guys. We're up next. It's The Warriors, because we were doing some over the top action films at the same time of these disaster movies. And then after The Warriors, it's Twister. So you're welcome that we have to really torture ourselves with that one, guys.
That's
But-
Mom's favorite movie, by the way.
Yep, we're doing it for the First Lady and for our dozens of fans on YouTube. So, anyways, guys, that's all the time we have time for today.
All the time we have time.
Yeah, all the time we have time. All the time we have for today. But there's only one thing left to say, of course, and that is, as always, peace and love from Denny and Son. Bye.
Bye.